Well, let's move to another important development in the, I don't know if I should call it the Anglosphere. That sounds weird, but there is a connection. There's some connection between the U.S., Canada, and now we're going to Britain. It feels like there's something there. I don't know. But nonetheless, some very, very important political developments, new political parties, attacks by the government on the Palestine movement, some interrelationship between those two things. So to turn to all of this and more, we are very, very honored to be joined on the show once again by Ashok Kumar, who is an associate professor of political economy at Birkbeck University of London. Ashok, as always, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. I'm sure a lot of people have seen the new party that's launched there in the UK, Your Party, with Jeremy Corbyn and other figures. Many people are joining. But, we just got off talking about arms embargoes and unions in Canada and Gaza and the broader Palestine liberation movement. And it kind of brings me to my first question is Zarah Sultana, who is a minister of parliament, who is also one of the members of your party. I saw she recently came out and said that the smears won't work this time. The attempt to shut down this new political movement by smearing it for being anti-Semitic will not succeed, that they will hold strong in solidarity with Palestine. And I just want to ask you, do you see any connection with the rapid rise of hundreds of thousands of people signing up almost overnight for this new political party and the surge in solidarity we've seen in the UK for around Palestine over the past 2 years?
Yeah, okay, so firstly, it's not called Your Party, just to clarify. That was a way to be like, you can come up with the name. It's built from the ground up. But yeah, obviously it's the website's called Your Party, so people can sign up. And 800,000 people have signed up in less than a month. You have to then consider the fact that, our population is 1/5 that of the U.S. So imagine less than a month, a new party has, that many people that have signed up in the U.S. And so even if a third of the people who've signed up sign up to become members, which almost certainly will happen, it'll be the biggest party in Britain. 2/3 sign up, it'll be bigger than every party in Britain combined. So the fact is it's very like obvious that a significant proportion of the country is yearning for a genuinely socialist and anti-imperialist politics. And why I say anti-imperialist is because you have a Green Party, which is pretty left-wing on lots of issues, but have been very soft until recently on the imperialism question, and were attacking Jeremy Corbyn when he was the leader of the Labour Party from 2015 to 2019 from the right on these kinds of questions. But yes, it's been a sort of messy launch. And the reason it's been a messy launch is because there are these real tensions between those who, and those aren't like big P political tensions. Those are tensions about structure and who controls the party. And on one side, you have these kind of advisors and bureaucrats, the same people who, during the Corbyn leadership, watered down policy and capitulated to the sort of establishment smears on anti-Semitism, which was really just an attack because he was pro-Palestinian, as we know, that which has now really come to light, obviously, since October 7th, those kinds of tactics. And they were against sort of the democracy reforms, or they capitulated on the democracy reforms. So Zarah Sultana is really addressing, not really Jeremy Corbyn specifically, because he was very consistent and principled. And even he sort of stood up against the IHRA. And you see from the numerous autopsies that have come out that it was him that was principled, but his advisors, the same advisors who are trying to control the party now, are the ones that consistently sort of pushed him to the right and sort of to moderate and to capitulate. And so they caved repeatedly when he was actually quite principled and repeatedly principled. So Zarah Sultana, and not just her, but like movement leaders and ordinary members, do not want to repeat the failures of laborism, specifically on these kinds of questions. So when she comes out and says, make no mistakes, come at me with your smears, we're anti-Zionist, she's speaking to that composition of people that know what happened, can see through what the attacks and the effect of those attacks, and don't want to see a repeat of that. So the real fight right now is between sort of real democracy in the party and bureaucracy. And so the demand right now, really, if you see the internal documents and even publicly, is that when the conference happens, which is scheduled for November, that it's one member, one vote. It isn't mediated through some kind of bureaucracy and delegate system. And that those elections, that all the leadership positions are voted in by the members, not sort of anointed through systems of patronage. And that the Constitution is actually written and voted on by us. It's the members, not drafted by the sort of same old establishment advisors who were there from 2015 to 2019 in some back office. So this is really what Zarah's trying to do really is try to break with the sort of top-down laborism that you saw then. And really the party if done right, this party can be sort of the biggest, most democratic, most radical political force really in British history, not just another sort of hollow brand, but a genuine vehicle for the working class, for socialism and anti-imperialism.
I think it's so exciting. And honestly, I think the name of your party, even if it's just a filler for the moment, has a nice ring to it. Your party. But I do want to ask, this is very exciting, but there's also been other exciting left parties and movements and leadership that has arisen in the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years that's failed. So I'm curious, I imagine some of those failures are lessons to look at for creating a new party. So what lessons are being drawn from the failures of, previous left projects like Syriza or Podemos, or even Corbyn's own leadership of Labour, which obviously had lots of reasons why that didn't work out. But it's important, obviously, to look back and reflect to know how to move past those obstacles going forward.
Yeah, that's an important question. So, if you're comparing it to Syriza was obviously a kind of coalition of left forces. This is the Greek, left-wing party. It was a coalition of Trotskyists, Maoist parties, and sort of Euro-communists who were the dominant force, synopsis most. And a lot of the capitulation that happened during that time was due to pressure from the Troika. And because of the sort of more moderate politics of synopsis most, the Euro-communists. In this party, with your party or the new party, we don't have to really contend with that. We've already learned the lessons, hopefully, of what happened between 2015 and 2019. And that's sort of like building up calluses. What it does is allow you to see your opponent's strategies for what they are. It exposes it for what they are. But with that, you get the good part of that, which means you can see your opponents for what they've done, and they've revealed themselves a little bit too much. But the bad part is that you're carrying with you also the trauma and the politics and the divisions and of that period as well. And you're seeing some of that really play themselves out to some extent with these early days of the party. And lots of people are saying, oh, this is the tensions of the left, whatever. You're trying to bring together nearly 1 million people, different political tendencies. Of course, you're going to have tensions, and those tensions are going to be played out sometimes publicly. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a real drive to try to make this happen. Podemos, on the other hand, they did some good things, but they were trying to concede too much ground on discourse. And I think that you don't really see that happening here. You don't see people saying, we're not socialists, we're not this, we're not that. And so it's really early days. I don't know. I mean, certainly we should be learning those lessons, even from what's happening in France, Mélenchon, what's happening in. It's not just learning the bad parts, but also learning what they did effectively.
I wonder, obviously it's early days, so it's tough to say, but what you think about the potential effect is on the Labour Party here. I mean, it seemed like it was basically the day after 500,000 people had signed up, then all of a sudden Keir Starmer was saying, we may recognize Palestine and making all these different sort of points. So it felt to me like they were feeling a little bit of heat, as it were, on their back from this expectation. But obviously they've gone so far to the right in terms of how they're trying to message things. I wonder if you think this might be a relief to them, perhaps, because some people who they view as irritants are now outside of the party, or if it could seriously affect their calculations going into the next general election.
Well, Eugene, it depends if you think that recognizing Palestine is is theater. Of course, they can say. I mean, he didn't even recognize Palestine. He said, if you stop starving the people of Gaza, maybe in September, when everyone in Gaza has basically been starved to death, we might recognize Palestine. That's basically what he said. And that's off the back of France already agreeing and Canada making overtures towards it. So, putting that to one side, I don't think that was necessarily motivated by this. I mean, you had over 200 Labour MPs, people who don't stand for anything, saying you should sign up to this, many of them members of Labour Friends of Israel. So it tells you that this might be some form of theater. What does it mean to recognize Palestine even? The real question is what they've done around people who've protested. So you have Palestine Action here who have targeted Israeli the arms companies that are arming the genocide and fueling the genocide. They've consistently stopped. They've shut down 3 factories permanently. They've been a real force in this country. And not only did they charge the people that were arrested by Palestine Action under terrorism offenses, which not even the Tory government did, but that preceded us, but they then prescribed it as a terrorist organization, an unprecedented move. And since then, you've had hundreds of people. The largest arrest, a single arrest of a group of people in this country's history, 500 people, 350 people last week. Every week, hundreds and hundreds of people getting arrested, elderly people, disabled people, just for holding signs that said, "We support Palestine action and the genocide." And so they're coming down so hard. It's not a sort of rational choice, because what it does is it exposes the country, the government, for what they are, which is you're arming the genocide still. You haven't stopped arming it. You're training Israeli soldiers, which you've admitted to do just weeks ago. You came out in the days following October 7th to say Israel had a right to starve Gaza, and you haven't apologized for that, and you haven't even recognized that. And you're running daily surveillance over Gaza, which you're doing on behalf of Israel. So it just sort of exposes really what the government and what Starmer and what the Labour government have been up to, but also it's being reflected in the polls. You have record-breaking disapproval of this government. So and it's only been a year since he got elected. So it was an election won on sand. It doesn't mean anything. And unfortunately, reform is dominating in the polls. I mean, just weeks ago, there was a poll that was done of this new party that doesn't even have a name, doesn't even have any membership, isn't really even registered, and Labour, and both were at 15% each. So that tells you how deeply, deeply unpopular this government is.
I mean, it's really, really incredible. But, I'm curious, we've already talked about Gaza. There's the Israeli elephant in the room, because we've seen what the Israelis and their supporters in the UK are capable of doing to sabotage any sort of political momentum towards progressivism, because progressivism and leftism, goes hand in hand with equality for Palestinians. So are you all prepared for that level of attack and sabotage? And I guess I'm going to throw another question on top of that. What has the response been so far to this party? Has it been hostile from the media and the political establishment?
So obviously, Zionist institutions have come out and basically, Board of Deputies, others have said, Zarah, this party is anti-Semitic, whatever. What's surprising is none of the press have really run with that story, because they just have that just doesn't fly anymore. I mean, you have to remember in 2019, when Jeremy Corbyn in a debate referenced Jeffrey Epstein and referred to him as Epstein, this is a known, most famous pedophile in the world. The press and the Zionist institutions called it anti-Semitic because he said it sounded too German. I mean, this is the levels that we had reached in 2018.
Doesn't even make sense.
And it doesn't even make any sense, because that's how you pronounce his name. So, so none of those things, none of those attacks, even Zarah coming out and saying, I'm an anti-Zionist, your smears aren't going to work. The press didn't even run it, and she's basically co-leading this party. And so what that means is not because they're not going to try every tactic. It's just become so transparent. So what I imagine they'll do is use other attempts. So even you look at far-right characters in this country like Tommy Robinson, who founded the English Defense League, and others are funded directly, and this is well known, funded directly by Israeli institutions and Israeli Zionist-funded institutions. So what they'll do is try to stir up some of this. And they'll try to use other attempts that aren't anti-Semitism, because I think the value of that attack has really been hollowed out by them. And so it's yet to be seen. They will attempt, obviously, to sabotage and undermine, but there doesn't seem to have been an effective tactic so far in the last month since it's been launched.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot to watch and a lot to see, and I think it's going to be very interesting when we see the conference this fall. As always, Ashok Kumar, it really is a pleasure to have you here with us on the Freedom Side.
Thanks for having me.